What made the popular kid at school the unpopular kid? Story 1. My partner likes to tell the story of how she became the unpopular kid at school. She was about 6 or 7, so primary 2 here in the UK, and a trend kicked off in her class of eating dog biscuits. All the kids were stealing dog biscuits from home and eating them at break time. Unfortunately, she didn't have a dog, and just had to eat normal human biscuits at school. She was ostracized every break time for it. Peer pressure is weird sometimes. Story 2. He got into legal trouble because he and his team embezzled/misused $250K from the student union. The university kicked him out, stopped paying the annual $2 million to the student union, withhold funds, although that was later overruled by the courts, and revoked the privileges granted to the student union. Earlier this year, they stated that they and students have no affiliation to the student union after 1 year of negotiations. His team was still running the student union because they were re-elected. They bought votes by offering pancakes, waffles, and donuts for those who vote for their party, and had street volunteers that would pressure students to vote for the party. It actually led to a law being passed in Ontario that prevented universities from forcing students to pay non-mandatory fees. The scandal was revealed by a student party called the Rhino Party back in December 2018. January and February, heads started rolling and law and accounting firms started getting involved to figure out how much was spent. It was rumored the figure was anywhere from $100K to $900K. Ontario provincial lawmakers passed the law in the summer of 2018. Starting fall 2019, I had the choice whether I wanted to pay auxiliary fees to support the student newspaper, NGOs that operated in the school, support the student union, etc. That provincial law was recently overturned by the courts this year, so starting next fall, I am forced to pay fees associated with groups that I don't support. He went from being popular to being a school meme. There's actually a lot of bank statements available that showcase what they bought. Story 3. There was one kid in my class who was the son of our math teacher. He was crazy popular because he was able to help everyone out with their homework for that class. Turns out he was actually snooping through his dad's notes to get the answers. The teacher naturally got super suspicious after a while, so he deliberately made a fake answer sheet. Of course, the kid grabbed it and noted it all down. It was full of wrong answers so blatant that anyone who even slightly paid attention in class would know they were way off base. The kid handed out the answers anyway, and in an instant made about half the class bomb, and his popularity dropped like a rock as they all accused him of deliberately making them fail. They moved him to another class, and they never had an incident of cheating again. Story 4. Guy wasn't necessarily the popular kid, but it wasn't a big school, so everyone knew everyone. I think between 9th and 10th grade, he was found alone in his car behind the local arcade beating off. He was called Thumper from that day forward. No idea what happened after graduation, but he has to have some bad memories of those years. Story 5. This guy at my table would play the card, "No one likes me. I'm the center of attention now." As in, he would fake sadness for attention, redirecting conversation and drawing the energy from a room. Like the kid who won't be friends with you anymore because you wore the same color shirt. He was quite wealthy too and would rub it in your face. Story 6. He didn't exactly become unpopular, but my high school star quarterback recorded a video of him fingering his butt, and he sent it to a girl in a neighboring school district. The video got passed around there and made its way back into our school, and he got a social vibe checked. But he didn't really lose his popularity. It just sort of lessened, and he actually became a way better person after the fact. He still never learned that you can't throw bullets when playing indoor football in gym class against non-football players, though. Story 7. Not exactly popular, more like king of the assholes, but he had a project in mind. Bully the newcomer to get some fresh fame for his butt apostles. The target? A Greek exchange student. Nice guy, but quite a meaty boy. 150 plus kilos. And a wrestler. I watched. No fucking way I was getting in the middle of a bitch slap tornado. And my regret, as of today, is a lack of camera smartphones back then. Bully got his jaw broken and lost 5 frontal teeth, dislocated shoulder, and 3 fractured ribs. Legally speaking, he only defended himself and also played his defense on his weight, blaming the bully for making him lose his balance, and by doing so, fell on him. It's not entirely false. He got back 2 months later, still suffering from his injuries, shunned by his previous peers, stayed about 2 weeks, and then never came back. Story 8. There was an Asian girl who was well liked by everyone, smart, happy to help anyone struggling in class, and was generally a nice person. But her uncle scammed a lot of people in her community, including parents of kids that went to school. She went from being well liked to being bullied. Still, she dropped out of school. Story 9. I went to an all-girls school and there was an all-boys school about 5 minutes walk away. When I was in my final year, the school vice principal of the boys' school was dating one of our grade leaders. Both being 17 and not very smart, she eventually got pregnant. She dropped out, and pretty much everyone who knew him at our school hated him. Prior to that, he was very well liked. I honestly thought it was a bit ridiculous. Pretty sure it takes two to tango. Story 10. I went to school from 4th grade to high school with a kid my age whose father was a prominent city official in our town. Even though we lived only a few blocks from one another, we were in different worlds. My background was much more blue-collar, and unfortunately I lived in an alcoholic and physically violent household. For these, and other reasons I never understood, his mother despised me, and she wanted her son to have nothing to do with me. She actually called my mother once to suggest that she keep me away from her son, since our class in life was so very different. I found him smart and funny and fascinating, and we palled around. He wore slacks while I wore jeans, and his suede shoes were much better than my sneakers. By our high school years, he was a football letterman while I was a band geek, and he was in college prep while I took vocational courses. We still knew each other, but he was in a college track, and I was living day by day. As graduation approached, we learned that his parents had worked with the local congressman for his appointment to West Point. Wow. Tragically, the night of graduation, he and his girlfriend went out with him driving drunk on a country road. He hit an oak tree and she was killed. That's the last I ever heard of him, but once in a while I Google his name just to see if he might surface somewhere. I sometimes think of how mortified his status-conscious mother must have felt, and wonderful about his girlfriend's family, and of course what happened to my friend, who killed someone just before his life began. I wish him well over 40 years later. I'm just not sure what happens when life seems to be laid out before you with concrete expectations, and it all goes so tragically wrong in the blink of an eye. Story 11. Reverse story. Unpopular kid. Computer nerd, kind, but damn, he was good at programming. Never had a date and was an outcast. End of his senior year, the class gives out awards, most likely to succeed, like that. He wins the most likely to die a virgin award. He goes up, grabs the mic, and says he would like to thank all the girls that made this possible. Instant legend. Story 12. I was relatively popular. I was in JV basketball, marching band, mathletes, and track, and pretty much made friends with everyone, until my best friend at the time claimed I pushed her down the stairs and caused her to have surgery on both legs. Thing is, I was at my grandmother's funeral in another state the entire week she claimed it happened. While the teachers kept us apart and understood my side, none of the others really believed me, except the anime club. They believed me. Go Weebs. Story 13. A somewhat more lighthearted one. We had a kid all called Dan, who was incredibly popular because he played football, came from a wealthy-ish family, had a whole bunch of girlfriends. He was quite stereotypically a straight kid who liked manly things and was academically gifted, but was never a bully. He was popular because of a combination of these things. When we came back from summer holidays in year 10, Dan had totally changed. Long emo hair, eyeliner, slouched when he walked, listened to metal, gave up football, came out as bisexual, and dated another male student. Nobody could quite decide what to make of it, and because we were teens, it made our class uncomfortable. So, sadly, for about 6 months, Dan was pretty much a non-person. Then, one day, something just gave, and we realized Dan was still the person he was before, and we were the ones being assholes. He never quite became the popular kid again, but everyone at school went back to liking him, and he had a large social circle, stayed at our school right through 6th form, and graduated with excellent marks. I have no idea what happened to him after school, but looking back, such a sudden personality shift might have rung some alarm bells, but I do think about him from time to time. I was an unpopular, bullied kid, but he was never mean to me. Story 14. There was a really pretty girl that was quite popular in my school. She was a bit snobby to people and sorta rude. I recall one time she threw a textbook at my groin because I was leaning back in my desk and thought it was funny. I guess it kinda was, thinking back. She also liked to make fun of the fact that I was Mexican on more than one occasion. Anyways, she gained significant weight our senior year in high school, and I guess a lot of the popular kids decided to disown her for it. I never actually heard anything, but I recall her sitting all alone at lunch one day. Not my best moment, but I walked by her, pointed, and plainly said, "You earned this." Story 15. She was an aspiring singer-songwriter, and she had a YouTube channel. It was discovered that she was lip-syncing in a lot of her singing videos. She actually was a good singer, and after high school she had a bit of success, so I don't know why she bothered lip-syncing. Story 16. She got pregnant at 17, and the father could have been one of two guys, both of whom were boyfriends of her close friends, and neither of whom wanted anything more to do with her. My school actually had really good sex education, and we knew about contraception from the age of about 11. Plus, this was the UK where contraception is free and easy to get, so she couldn't blame ignorance or lack of resources. She tried for the Woe is Me Act, and nobody wanted to be around her anymore. Since a lot of people are talking about double standards, I'll add that both potential fathers were also ostracized after that. They cheated on their girlfriends, both of whom were well-liked, and had been stupid enough to not even use contraception when they also couldn't plead ignorance or lack of access. As for the girl in question, she wasn't ostracized for having sex, or even for getting pregnant, really. The primary reason was that she'd slept with her close friends' boyfriends and, again, not even used protection. Plus, when she went around looking for sympathy afterwards, rather than just accepting that she'd done something wrong, that made it so much worse. She tried to claim it was all her friends' fault for being bad girlfriends, and if they weren't, their boyfriends wouldn't have been interested in her. Story 17. My grade school most popular kid was a fat-ass bully that only was popular because people feared him, and so they wanted to please him. He bullied me for 6 years. Then we got to middle school, and there, people started to bully him for his weight and looks. I will never forget the day, years after grade school, when I ran into him again, and he was a friendless, depressed mess that begged if he could hang out with me. My God, was it satisfying to just laugh at him and walk away. Still, it has been over a decade, and I truly hope his life and personality turned out for the better. Story 18. Pretty cool guy, into a few different hobbies, and was very friendly. Too friendly. Me and my friends noticed this and dropped him because he wouldn't stop trying to be physical with us. His excuse was, "I am bisexual," but that gives him no right to touch me. Eventually, he cheated on his girlfriend of several years with the school whore, recorded fucking her, and showed his friends. Within a day, the entire school hated him, and he dropped out, or transferred. Nobody knows, nobody cares. But I know a lot of people that would love to throw hands for what he did. His ex that he cheated on was insanely heartbroken, and led to a very depressing and sad part of her life. But she has gotten better since, as far as I know. Story 19. I swam competitively through high school, but just wasn't quite good enough to continue in college. But to stay connected to aquatics, I became a lifeguard and swim instructor for our university pool and all their school and community events. Many of the swimmers and water polo players were lifeguards and instructors themselves on the off-seasons. Our head guard was the polo team's BMOC. He was a beast in the pool. He was cool, witty, handsome, the whole shebang. We'll call him Steve. Anyway, we get to work one morning and our big boss was out of his office, already a rare occurrence, and called us all together. I arrived a little late, so I only caught the end where he kept saying, "No one talk about Steve in front of the guests. I don't even want to hear his name." Once we split to start the day, I was trying to find out what happened. Someone pulled out their phone and there he was, Steve's mugshot after being arrested for statutory. Turns out he had a part-time job as a high school coach, and you can complete the picture. I have never seen someone disappear so fast. His name was removed from team rosters, media promotionals, his position as a guard vacated and refilled, etc., etc. It was a weird time. Story 20. I wasn't the popular kid, because we didn't really have one, but I was well-liked in a fairly small school in a small area. My dad had a local shop near the school that often sold out-of-date goods, because it was a low-income area, and the out-of-date stuff was usually cheaper for him to buy, so he could sell it cheaper. Well, another nearby school closed, and a new kid started and tried bullying me by saying my dad's shop was called Out-of-Date Dave's, which people did call it, but not to me or in the school, and I simply replied, "Yeah, well, your parents shop there." Shut him up real quick. Story 21. In elementary school, popularity was already sort of a nebulous concept, but one boy got pantsed at recess and was found to be wearing diapers. Pretty sure he was incontinent, which has got to be a rough f***ing road for a little kid, especially since he didn't seem to have any other noticeable disabilities. So this was in the late 90s, maybe 98 or 99. We were in 2nd grade? This kid, we'll just call him Timmy, was pretty well liked. He was a nice kid and got along with everyone pretty well. For whatever reason, the boys of my class were comparing undies on the playground. Like, oh, I got Scooby-Doo, or I got spaceships, or whatever. Why? I couldn't tell you. Little kids are f***ing weird. So, Timmy was the holdout of the group, wouldn't tug down his pants to show what prints he had. He got accused of having girly underwear, and one thing led to another, culminating in a couple boys grabbing him and pulling down his pants. And boom, wasn't what anyone was expecting. Timmy didn't have girly undies, he had on a big old diaper. In hindsight, it made a lot of things make sense. He had carte blanche to leave class to the nurse. He wore baggy pants, and every once in a while, the classroom stank something fierce. He got teased pretty badly that day, and for a while afterwards, though people eventually mellowed out about it once it was no longer the new thing. The story doesn't end here, though. This was one of the earliest moments in my life that I understood what empathy was. One of my biggest childhood nightmares got presented right in front of me. I was a bedwetter from ages of 3 to around 13, and not just occasionally, but like every single night. So, for most of that time, I had to wear something similar every night. I was terrified that someone would find out, and my life would be over. I was already a little socially outcast because I was an odd kid, which only magnified my fears. To my shame, I made fun of Timmy that day, and several days after. I'd call him names or tug at his waistband or whatever. It wasn't until I mentioned to my mom about him that I got an earful and a reminder that I had to wear the same thing at night. That stuck with me, and not much later than that, I apologized to him and instead tried to befriend him. I didn't have a lot of friends, and he had lost a lot of his. Funnily enough, I guess 7-year-olds don't have a strong sense of loyalty. We were pretty good friends throughout elementary school. I told him my own secret to make him feel better, and I think it did. Though I'm sure he was pretty pissed since I was such a about it at first. He was the only friend I felt completely comfortable having sleepovers with due to our collective shame. He moved away the first year of middle school, which was a bummer, and we didn't really reconnect at all until early high school, where we talked online. He never told me the exact reason that he had to wear them, or if he did, I don't remember. But it really seemed like he just couldn't control his bladder or bowels at all, so maybe he was incontinent due to a nerve injury or something? I don't know. But that's pretty much the gist of it. It seriously impacted his social life, but things certainly got better as people moved on. If anyone has any questions, I could try to answer, but I think I laid out as much as I could remember of something from over 20 years ago.